When you think about retirement, what's the first image that comes to mind? Maybe it's a quiet morning on the porch with a cup of coffee, or maybe it's traveling to places you never had time to see before. For many people, retirement is the first time in decades they get to slow down and decide what really matters to them. But here's something that often surprises us. Retirement isn't just an ending. It can also be the beginning of something new, something deeply meaningful. Today I want to share some inspirational stories of retirees who found new purpose in life. And along the way, I hope you'll see pieces of your own story reflected back at you. I want to start with a woman named Carol. For more than 30 years, she worked as a nurse, giving everything she had to her patients and her hospital. When she finally retired, she was excited to rest, but after a few months she found herself asking, "What now?" She had always loved reading to her grandchildren, so she started volunteering at the local library story hour. At first, it was just one morning a week, but that simple act grew into something bigger. Before long, Carol was helping organize reading programs for children who struggled in school. She began mentoring other volunteers. She often said, "I thought I was done giving, but now I realize I've just begun." Carol's story is a reminder that the skills and passions we've nurtured over a lifetime can become gifts we share in new ways once we retire. That brings us to the first insight. Retirement isn't about stopping, it's about shifting. Think of it like a river that changes course. The water doesn't stop flowing, it simply finds a new path. If you've spent your life working hard, raising a family, or caring for others, you already have strengths and experiences that can guide your next chapter. Some people, like Carol, discover their purpose through volunteering. Others find it in hobbies they never had time for before. The important part is giving yourself permission to explore, without the pressure of a paycheck or a deadline. Take Bill, for example. Bill had been a high school history teacher for most of his life. When he retired, he didn't miss the grading or the long hours, but he did miss sharing stories. One day, his daughter suggested he start giving tours at the local historical society. At first, he laughed at the idea, but eventually he gave it a try. Today, Bill is known as one of the most popular guides in town. He lights up when he talks about old buildings, local heroes, and the way history shaped their community. What started as a way to pass the time became his way of staying connected, of teaching without a classroom. Bill says he never really stopped being a teacher, he just found a new audience. Stories like Bill's teach us the second lesson. Our purpose often shows up when we stay connected to the parts of ourselves we've always loved. Sometimes people think retirement means leaving their identity behind. But the truth is, the core of who we are doesn't disappear. If you loved mentoring, guiding, creating, or helping, there are countless ways to keep doing those things in this new stage of life. And then there's Maria. She spent most of her career as an accountant. Numbers, spreadsheets, tax season, her life was full of structure. But in retirement, she wanted something completely different. She joined a local art class, even though she'd never picked up a paintbrush before. At first, she was nervous. "What if I'm no good at it?" she thought. But as the weeks went by, she discovered not only that she enjoyed painting, but also that it became her form of meditation. Her art isn't hanging in any gallery, but it fills her home and the homes of her children and friends. More importantly, it fills her heart. Maria's story shows us the third lesson. Retirement can be a time of reinvention. We don't have to be defined by what we've always done. Sometimes, the freedom of this stage gives us the courage to try something new, without worrying about whether we're the best at it or not. The act of creating, learning, and exploring keeps our minds sharp and our spirits young. Of course, purpose doesn't always come from big projects or grand adventures. Sometimes it shows up in small, steady ways. Take James and Evelyn, a couple who had been married for more than 40 years when they retired. They could have filled their time with travel, but instead they chose something closer to home. They started a community garden in their neighborhood. At first, it was just a few raised beds. Then neighbors began pitching in. Kids learned how to plant tomatoes and basil. Older folks shared recipes and gardening tips. What started as a simple idea grew into a hub of connection. James often says, it's not just about growing vegetables, it's about growing relationships. Their experience brings us to the fourth lesson. Purpose often blossoms when we invest in community. Retirement can sometimes feel lonely, especially if we're used to being around coworkers or busy family schedules. But when we reach out and connect with others, whether through a garden, a club, a church, or a group project, we find belonging. And belonging is one of the greatest sources of joy at any age. Now, you might be thinking, that sounds wonderful, but what if I don't know where to start? That's a very real question. After decades of having your days planned out by work or family, open time can feel overwhelming. The good news is purpose doesn't have to arrive overnight. It often begins with curiosity. Try asking yourself, what activities bring me joy? What causes move my heart? Who do I enjoy spending time with? The answers might surprise you. Let me share the story of Thomas. After retiring from a career in sales, he felt restless. He missed the daily conversations and the sense of accomplishment. One afternoon, he wandered into a local animal shelter just to look around. Within weeks, he was volunteering there, walking dogs, cleaning cages, and talking with visitors. What started as a casual stop turned into a mission. He found himself waking up excited again, knowing he was making a difference even in small ways. He often tells people, I didn't just find a hobby, I found a reason to get out of bed. And that's the fifth lesson. Sometimes purpose comes not from a grand plan but from simply showing up. By being open to opportunities, we stumble upon the things that make life feel rich and meaningful. As you hear these inspirational stories for retirees, maybe you're starting to reflect on your own journey. Maybe you've already found something that lights you up, or maybe you're still searching. Either way, the stories remind us that retirement is not an ending, but a canvas waiting for new colors. If this resonates with you, think of someone you know who might need a little encouragement right now. Maybe a friend who's just retired and isn't sure what to do next. Share this message with them, because sometimes all it takes is one story to spark a new beginning. Now let's look at one last example. Margaret and her friends started what they call the Tuesday table. Every week, they gather at a cafe not just to chat but to welcome newcomers. Anyone who wants company is invited. Over the years, the Tuesday table has become a lifeline for widows, widowers, and people who simply crave connection. Margaret says, it's proof that purpose doesn't have to be complicated. Sometimes it's just about showing up for others. That's a powerful reminder, and it leads to our final lesson. Purpose is found in relationships. At the end of the day, it's not about how many activities we join or how many hobbies we pursue. What matters most are the people we share our lives with, the kindness we extend, and the love we give and receive. So, as we wrap up these inspirational stories for retirees, let's take a step back. We've heard about Carol, who discovered new meaning through volunteering. We met Bill, who found a way to keep teaching. We saw Maria's courage to reinvent herself with painting, James and Evelyn's community garden that blossomed into connection, Thomas's unexpected joy at an animal shelter, and Margaret's Tuesday table that became a lifeline for many. Each story is different, yet each points to the same truth. Retirement is not the end of purpose, but the opening of a new chapter. As you think about your own path, remember that there's no one right way to spend these years. Your purpose might be big or small, public or private, familiar or brand new. What matters is that it feels meaningful to you. I'd love to hear your thoughts. What brings you purpose in this stage of life? What new passions or connections have you discovered? Share your stories in the comments, because you never know whose life you might touch with your words. And if you found these stories uplifting, I'd be grateful if you gave this video a like, shared it with a friend, and subscribed for more conversations like this. Together, we can keep inspiring one another, reminding each other that retirement is not about stepping back. It's about stepping into something new. So here's my final thought for you today. Life doesn't stop at retirement. In many ways, it begins again. The question is not, what have I finished? But rather, what can I begin? And that, my friends, is where the joy truly lies.